Imagine a day where children are guided and nurtured in a way that honors their unique humanness. A day where, instead of being expected to change in order to fit in, children can be met right where they're at. Welcome to Where They're Planted, a podcast for parents and care providers of unique children. Caring for a child with a developmental, emotional, or behavior challenge, a neurodiverse brain, or difficult early life experiences can be confusing and exhausting. On this podcast, we'll help your child flourish and strengthen their roots by helping you not only understand them, but also gain the skills to help them bloom where they're planted. We'll use brain science, nervous system tools, collaborative strategy sessions, and a deep understanding of the developmental process to create a fertile environment around your child in order to nurture their growth. I am your host, Jen Bluske, an occupational therapist with over 25 years of experience and a parent coach. My most closely held title, however, is that of a single mom of 2 thriving adopted kids, so I have walked this walk. I am truly excited to share, teach, and dive into these important topics on each episode. Hello, parents. I'm Jen, the founder of Thriving Parents Collective, and I want to take a moment to speak to you directly from the heart. As a parent myself, I understand the joys and struggles that come with raising kids in today's fast-paced world. When I started this journey, I felt overwhelmed and very unsure. I realized that we all need a little support and guidance along the way. That's why I created Thriving Parents Collective, because I believe that every parent deserves to feel empowered and confident in their parenting journey. Our personalized coaching and courses are designed to meet you exactly where you're at. We can help you gain clarity, build stronger connections, and navigate the challenges of raising your unique child. Together, we can create a nurturing environment where both you and your child can thrive. If you're ready to take the first step towards a more fulfilling parenting experience, I invite you to visit us at thrivingparentscollective.com and schedule your free discovery call. Let's embark on this journey together. Welcome back to Where They're Planted. I am so glad you're joining us today as we are going to do a little bit of a deep dive into the fascinating yet often misunderstood aspect of child development, which is boredom. In our fast-paced, really structured world, we often forget that boredom isn't just something that we need to fill for our kids. It's actually one of these powerful catalysts for creating creativity, emotional resilience in our children. And today, we're going to explore how creating those moments of boredom can significantly impact our kids' mental health, support their problem-solving skills, and really encourage independence. I want to make sure that we walk away with some practical steps for you as parents that you can take to maybe help introduce more unstructured time into your family's busy schedule. I know in our last episode, we talked about routines. And so the follow-up is now, how do we create this unstructured time? What do we do with it? Let's nurture this idea of creating boredom together. Let's just talk a little bit about, what is boredom, right? Our kids might be saying, I'm bored, there's nothing to do. Or, we might feel bored, which I know in my nervous system is sort of like an unsettled anxiety when I haven't had a lot of it. And so what is boredom? Boredom is really that ability to allow our brains to move toward and away from things that might feel right or different, or it's an opportunity to create in the moment. It opens up our creativity. Boredom is that ability to sit with whatever's in our own mind, right? There's nothing external forcing us to do anything or keeping us on track when we're in a state of boredom. Boredom is our ability to just be in our own bodies and in our current environment. I'm recording this in September, so the kids in my area just went back to school. And, I know at the end of the summer, that's, often the thing that a lot of parents are like, oh my gosh, there's so much boredom. And everybody's kind of going a little stir crazy from lack of structure, potentially. And really wanting to think about why boredom is really so important, why creating those moments of unstructured is so important. And when I really think about it, there are four that pop up for me as a professional in this field and as a parent when I'm really thinking about what's the purpose in a really, really busy life. So why am I going to create this open space where kids are often a little uncomfortable, truly, initially? The first one is creativity. So let's talk about creativity. So creativity is that ability to make something from our own desires and drives, right? It's that ability to express ourselves in a way that's unstructured. So creativity can obviously look like art. Creativity can look like music. Creativity can look like creation or building. Creativity can look like just something that happens in our mind, a story, right? A story that we create, or a way of moving through the world that's different than we typically would be able to do. When we're really thinking about development, creativity is vital. It's vital not only for development, but it's also vital for our mental health. We know that the way to move through a lot of anxiety is actually the flip side is creativity. It's a left brain, right brain flip, is that we want to get ourselves into that creative part of our brain in order to help mitigate some of our anxiety that pops up for us. The second benefit of boredom is independence. And so, right, as I talk to parents, often the thing we're thinking about is how do I help my child be more independent? How do I help them learn to problem solve? Independence comes about when we don't have any external direction. Right? We're able to independently figure out what we want to do. It turns on our autonomy. It turns on our ability to say, I just climbed that tree. Or, oof, I just moved that big giant rock over here. Or, whoa, I just was able to write down that story or think about this idea in myself. The third thing that boredom is going to do for us is that problem solving. When our days are so structured and we know exactly what's coming and how it's coming every day, we don't get the ability to have things go wrong and have to figure them out in a way that's more playful. And that's what boredom does. There's no expectation of something being done exactly the right way. So for example, kids might be getting home from school and we might have this structure of teaching independence, of put your backpack away and empty your lunch and change your clothes and start your homework, right? That is important and vital. And we want to make sure children have some of that structured routine time. And there's a different level of problem solving that happens when there's this innate drive that comes through boredom, that comes through unstructured time. There's the ability to problem solve in a different way. And frankly, it's the kind of problem solving that usually sticks and kids can learn from. So this is the problem solving of I'm trying to make a blanket fort and the blanket keeps falling down in the middle. So I'm going to grab all of the clothespins out of the house, or I'm going to grab all the chip clips and we're going to do it this way and we're going to try it that way with no external structure or end goal expectation other than what comes from the child. And so that's another reason why this boredom piece is so important for us. And then lastly, boredom encourages self-reflection, right? So when we don't have anything coming at us from the environment or any expectation of what we're doing next, our brains naturally are able to move into a self-reflective place. We're able to kind of behind the scenes process things that maybe happened during the day, maybe things we're thinking about, maybe interactions, maybe how we feel. It opens up some self-reflection, which is really embodiment. And so that ability to feel bored is also the beginnings of the ability to be able to sit with our feelings. And so I don't know if you as a parent ever experienced this, where we're processing or we're trying to figure something out and it's a little bit scary to just sort of sit on the couch without our phones in front of us or without our TVs on and just sit there and process and just let our brains do what they need to do to think through what happened in the day. That can feel really uncomfortable. And so practicing this boredom for children is that step that lets us start to feel comfortable with our self-reflection. Now, are kids sitting and saying, I'm reflecting on my day? Absolutely not. That's what happens in boredom and in play in a children's brain, is that's part of like sort of the natural process, right? We might be playing a really intense game where we're the predator and somebody else in the tree is the prey. And that might be our way of processing through the day. That might be what comes out for a child. And that's okay. That's helping lead those skills to be able to quietly sit in self-reflection and make sense of our world, make sense of our environment, make sense of our interactions. What we know is that there's actually a fairly significant mental health impact for kids who are able to have unstructured time. So that unstructured time, the statistics are showing that when children have less unstructured time, when there isn't enough unstructured time in their world, and this probably would also be on the other side. If there's only unstructured time, I'm sure that we would have challenges. But when we have adequate amounts of unstructured time, it decreases children's internalizing symptoms. So internalizing symptoms are anxiety, depression, that kind of thing. That unstructured time is supportive to mitigate some of those internalizing symptoms. The other thing that we know from the statistics is that unstructured play supports positive affect and coping skill, right? That ability to have affective, that's our face changing, our emotions shifting and changing, our affective skills and our coping skills, our ability to cope through something challenging. This is like tied to right problem solving and independence. During unstructured play, that's when a lot of that gets built and learned. There's also known to be increased emotional challenges when there's lacking of unstructured time. Okay. Which I understand for some parents listening who are parenting, kids with really unique nervous systems, that might feel a little counterintuitive. Like, wait a second, when I give unstructured time to my child, I see all sorts of emotional challenges, behavioral challenges. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit in how we start setting that up and then how we scaffold it for your child, because there is a place to be scaffolding. There is a place to, within all of this, really also be looking at your child's individual system, because no child is the same. Every system is different. The goal is you as the parents know your child best and are able to scaffold and adapt in order to really hit what they need from an unstructured perspective. So let's talk about, what we can do as parents to facilitate boredom some of the time. As I think about this, and when my kids were younger, and that idea, I know in my household, it was like weekend mornings, right? Weekend mornings, especially in the wintertime, were often sort of these like windows of natural unstructured time. And I remember sometimes just truly dreading them, to be dead honest, because it felt like a lot of chaos sometimes. It felt like a lot of work for me as a parent. And I had two kiddos who, especially one of my kids, really struggled with unstructured time. I don't know that they really understood how to do things on their own until they were 9, 10. And so one of the things I really thought about for myself is sometimes unstructured time, for when we create it for our children, doesn't mean it's unstructured time for us. There might be a fair amount of scaffolding we're doing as parents in order to help our children, frankly, learn how to do unstructured time. And so I'll circle back with kind of like what I did and how I managed that. But the step one is creating some windows, right? Creating some windows of unstructured time. And again, if you listened to last episode, which was routines, we talked about that this should be scheduled in. Unstructured time in this day and age should be scheduled into our weeks, because we tend to be so busy in our world. Not only unstructured time for our kids, but I'm going to argue unstructured time for ourselves as adults. Again, it might not be the same time, because our kids might really need us during unstructured time. And so when you think about how do I create this, maybe it is a weekend morning. I know in my family that tended to just be the time that made sense. It might be, frankly, in the car after school. I know that sounds ridiculous, right? Because the kids are literally just sitting there. But if you really think about what happens in the car after school, if you so happen to pick your kids up from school or from a daycare situation, a lot of times we're like talking about what's coming next, and we're really getting about like what happened during the day, and they're begging for their phones, and right, we're going. I know that, obviously we're going to foreshadow what's happening next, but what if we give some quiet space or some space with just some music on to let their little brains like land back to home life from wherever they've just been? It's another option of unstructured time. The other one might be, I don't know, depending on your family system, it might be right after school, right? That ability to just like go outside, be for a little while before, all of the things that need to happen in the day, unpacking the backpacks and the homework and all of that happens. And so the first step really is finding those little nuggets of unstructured time for yourself and for your child. And don't expect to have some sort of magical hour-long unstructured time. That's sometimes just not going to be feasible, right? Sometimes it's 5 or 10 minutes. Sometimes it's the ability to, while we're in transit somewhere, might be our unstructured time, and that's okay. Goes without saying, but much of our kids and our unstructured time in the last many years have been replaced by screens. So screens is not unstructured time. I'm going to say that again. Screens is not unstructured time and boredom time. It's not the brain's ability to get bored. What screens are actually doing is it's the ability to sort of shut down some of the processing that happens with true boredom or unstructured time. Screens also, because we know they hit the dopamine centers, are impacting our neurochemicals in a way that shifts our arousal states. And so screens do not equal boredom or downtime. I have so many parents say, they just need their 30 to 40 minutes of screens to calm down after school. I'm not saying that can't happen, right? That's not my place as a therapist to say, no, you can't, you can't, but we're not getting the benefits of the boredom and the downtime with a screen. I just had a family that I'm working with who has a couple kids, and one of them is a little guy who is just has a really intense sensory system, just really, really intense nervous system, needs a lot of movement, seeks a lot of movement. Sometimes it looks pretty unsafe. And they were able to state that screens were challenging because getting off screens were challenging. And this little guy, I think is 3 or 4, he was young. And they came to me and they stated that they made a giant change in their home, and they turned their living room into a free play creation area. There is no longer a screen available anywhere in the space. There are big blocks that can be moved. There are soft things that can be thrown. There are open-ended play activities available as their living room. And I asked them, like, how's that going? And the parent said to me, initially it was a little bit tricky, but what I'm noticing is that unstructured play is filling the need that my kiddo had. Now, it's not going to be perfect, right? And this is pretty dramatic, right? This family chose to make a fairly dramatic shift in their way they wanted to run their home and how they wanted to parent, but creating that open-ended, free, unstructured time and pulling screens down shifted this child's nervous system dramatically. And so I give that family so much props. Not every family is going to be able to do that or going to want to do that, and that's fair. But screens are not going to be our boredom and our downtime. And so I would encourage you to be aware, and I would encourage you to limit them in any and every way you possibly can. And in tandem to that is going to be limiting them for yourself, right? If we're on our screens and we're telling our kids they can't be on theirs, that's going to be tricky. Because again, another strategy is that we're modeling. As parents, we are always modeling. Whether we intend to or not, we are always modeling what we're hoping for our kids to do. And so when I'm stressed out after a long day and I put my phone into my Instagram, right, and I'm not available, and curl up on the couch and then get up stressed because I have to do my next structured activities, that's modeling. And so where can we find some middle ground? Like, what can we do? I don't know. Can we go for a walk after school where we leave the devices at home? Maybe. Another thing that I just alluded to is it's pretty hard to create too much structure and to get out of an unstructured space when we're in the outdoors exploring. So if you walk out the door without a structured sport, you are naturally in a boredom state. You are naturally in this unstructured exploratory state. It just is what happens in nature. Nature is just our way of, it's right there for us, and we don't really have to do anything about it. And so if nothing else, walk outside, right? Can we walk outside with our children? Can we get outside? Better yet, can we get in the woods somewhere, near water somewhere, where there's a little variation of sensations, right? There's things to walk over. There's different things to see. There's different things to touch. There's different things to hear. These are all things that sort of turn on that boredom brain, called the boredom brain, which is that unstructured exploratory curiosity brain. What we can do in our house, which I've alluded to, especially these are for our youngers, but you can do this as they get older as well, is providing really open-ended materials that are just available. So what I mean by open-ended materials is the created buckets. So what a created bucket is like a big Tupperware bin or something to that effect, where you put bottles that are cleaned out that you would have thrown in the recycles. You throw some tape, you throw some cardboard, you throw some whatever, where kids can look at something that has absolutely no right way or intended purpose and figure out what to do with it. Anything that is an open-ended building activity, open-ended crafting, open-ended musical instruments, the ability to take types of toys and put them together. I remember when my kids were young, again, I had, especially one of my kiddos really struggled with like, what do I do? And right. And I had all like the good toys because I'm an OT by training, and they didn't know what to do. So I would intentionally set up 4 buckets of open-ended toys in my living room that lived there for a few weeks. Matchbox cars, maybe some blocks, maybe some, I don't know, little plastic animals, and one other thing. And they would sit there so that we could explore with how we use ideas together. Eventually, we were able to build a Matchbox car that knocked over the dinosaur, right? Then the boredom and creativity, the creativity that comes out of boredom started. Often I needed to start by scaffolding. I needed to start it, which then meant the unstructured time was not unstructured for me. It was for my child, but it wasn't for me. I could start it and then they could keep it going and create and have some unstructured, creative, playful ideas. So that's an idea for your home is, can we pull together 2 or 3 things that are out in the open that our children can just bump into easily and explore with? Typically, right, we have so many toys in homes and it's hard to access them because there's just so many. And so 2 or 3 is what we need in a space that's very accessible for our kids. And then let's show our kids all the ways that we get to model boredom, right? What are we doing? What are we doing? I know this one's really hard for us as adults because we are all overscheduled. It's so much. I know music, right? Just turning on some music and dancing. It's a lovely way to create some unstructured exploratory time. I know that, again, anything outside in nature is useful. I know that if you are into any form of creativity or art, that is really useful, right? This is building stuff outside. This is painting. This is crafting in any sort of way is really, really useful for our kids to see us doing, especially when we're trying to maybe make sense of or regulate ourselves, right? How do we create that little bit of space for ourselves? Maybe it's sitting on the couch and quiet. And now, right, your house isn't quiet, but maybe you're quiet for a minute as a way of showing that. And so when we think about boredom, I want to see where you as parents find the value, right? After learning these things, are you seeing some value to the unstructured and boredom? And then maybe some steps of how to help our kids learn this skill, right? For a lot of our kids, if they're over about 2.5, this is a really new skill for a lot of kids in our society right now. And so I encourage you to explore with this, to create some space in your homes, in your schedules, in your minds, and see what can happen. I think I'm going to leave it right there. Thank you so much. Where They're Planted is a Lit Path Studios podcast and is produced by Jamie Gale and Jen Bluske. Music is by Gaston Reen and Pod 5. Thank you for loving your child right where they're planted.